What if the person you trust with your country's secrets is telling them to the enemy? Not for money, not for blackmail, but because they believe in something else more than they believe in you. Imagine that person is your friend, someone you've known for years, someone who sits at your table, laughs at your jokes, and works beside you every day. This isn't just a story. It happened. In the middle of the 20th century, the very heart of British intelligence was compromised. The men trusted to protect the nation's deepest secrets were secretly working for its greatest rival, the Soviet Union. They were known as the Cambridge Five. This is not just a history of what they did. It is a search for an answer to a more difficult question. How could this happen? We will look into the minds of these men and into the minds of the people who trusted them. We are trying to understand the simple, powerful, and very human reasons why the perfect betrayal was one nobody wanted to see. To understand how the secret was kept, you first have to understand the world it was kept in. Britain in the 1930s was a place of unspoken rules. At the top was an establishment of power, and its training ground was the old halls of Cambridge University. It was a small world, a club. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. This world ran on a particular kind of trust. It was a trust based on background. If you went to the right schools, spoke with the right accent, and understood the private jokes, you were accepted. You were seen as safe. You were one of them. This was the system that was meant to protect the country's secrets. It was also the system that allowed them to be stolen. People have a natural tendency to trust those who are like them. It's a simple human instinct. We feel comfortable with people who share our culture and our manners. The Cambridge Five used this instinct as a shield. They were masters of fitting in. Kim Philby, the most famous of the spies, was charming and well-liked. He was the definition of an English gentleman. His friends and colleagues saw him as one of their own, and so the idea of him being a traitor felt absurd. His background was his camouflage. The same was true for the others. Their education, their family connections, their social grace, all of it created a picture of reliability. They looked and sounded exactly like the men who were supposed to be hunting for spies. This made them nearly invisible. There were warnings. There were small signs that something was wrong, but these signs were often ignored. This is where another part of the human mind comes into play. It is the deep discomfort we feel when we hold two completely opposite ideas at the same time. Psychologists have a name for this feeling. For the colleagues of these spies, the two ideas were very painful. The first idea was, this man is my friend. He is a good man. He is one of us. The second idea was, the things this man is doing look like treason. Holding both of these thoughts is stressful. The mind looks for a way to relieve that stress. Almost always, it does this by throwing out the most painful idea. It was much easier for Philby's friends to believe he was just a bit messy with his work, or that he had bad luck, than to believe he was betraying his country. It was easier for the supervisors of Donald McLean, another spy, to think his strange anxieties were just a personal problem, not a sign of a double life. Accepting the truth would have been too disruptive. It would have meant their world was not as safe as they thought. It would have meant the people they trusted could not be trusted. It would have meant their judgment was wrong. So, to protect their view of the world, and to protect themselves from that terrible feeling, they explained the warnings away. They chose the more comfortable thought over the terrifying one. They saw what they wanted to see. Why did they do it? What could possibly motivate a person to betray their country, their colleagues, and their friends for decades? The answer, for them, was the power of an idea. To understand their choice, we have to go back to the world of the 1930s. It was a time of great trouble and fear. The Great Depression had left millions of people without work. Poverty was widespread. At the same time, a dark new force was rising in Europe: fascism. To many young, idealistic students at Cambridge, it looked like their own society was failing. They saw a world of inequality and injustice, and a government that seemed unable or unwilling to fix it. In this atmosphere of doubt, another idea presented itself. It was communism. Today, that word carries the weight of history, but at the time, for some, it was a promise. It was a story about a better world, a world without poverty or class, where everyone was equal. It felt scientific, it felt moral, and it felt like the only real answer to the threat of fascism. For a small group of young men at Cambridge, this idea became more important than anything else. It felt more real and more urgent than loyalty to a country they had come to see as broken and corrupt. This belief is what allowed them to justify their actions. In their own minds, they were not traitors. They were soldiers in a secret war, fighting for a higher cause. They were serving humanity itself, not just a single nation. Disbelief required them to build a wall inside their own heads. It allowed them to separate their actions from their feelings. They could betray a friend at work in the afternoon and then go home to their family in the evening because they believed their secret work served a greater good. This is a kind of moral conviction that can bend all other rules. Loyalty, friendship, honesty, all of these can be set aside in service of the main belief. Each act of spying, each secret past, probably made this belief even stronger. When you take a big risk for a cause, you need to believe in that cause more and more. To turn back would be to admit that your sacrifices and the harm you've caused were all for nothing. So, they kept going. Every lie they told was not just to fool their bosses. It was also, perhaps, to reassure themselves. It was proof that they were still committed, still on the right side of history as they saw it. They were trapped in a story they had chosen to believe, a story that put them at the center of a great historical struggle. And once you believe you are changing the world, it becomes very hard to see the simple damage you are doing to the people right in front of you. Living one life is hard enough. These men had to live two every single day for most of their adult lives. This required a kind of mental strength that is difficult to imagine. It meant that nothing could be simple. Every conversation was a performance. Every question from a friend could be a test. Every expression of friendship could be a mask. To survive, they had to become experts at building walls in their minds. This is something people do to cope with difficult situations. It's called compartmentalization. It means you take a part of your life, a feeling, a memory, or in their case, a massive secret, and you lock it away in a separate room in your head. When you are at work, being a British intelligence officer, the door to the spy room is closed and locked. When you are meeting your Soviet contact, the door to the friend and colleague room is shut. This allowed them to function. It allowed Kim Philby to hunt for a Soviet mole inside his own office, even though the mole was him. It allowed them to look their friends in the eye and lie without flinching. The walls had to be thick. If the two lives ever touched, the whole structure would collapse. But maintaining these walls takes a huge amount of mental energy. It is a constant, quiet strain. This strain has a cost. The pressure of living a permanent lie wears a person down. We can see the cracks in some of the spies. Guy Burgess and Donald McLean were both known for their heavy drinking and sometimes wild, unpredictable behavior. Was this just part of their personality? Or was it the immense pressure of their secret life leaking out? Was it the human mind struggling under a weight it was not designed to carry? We can't know for sure. But it seems likely that the constant fear of being discovered, the isolation of never being truly known by anyone, would leave a mark. To be a successful spy for so long, you must kill a part of yourself. You must silence the part of you that wants to be honest and open with other people. You live in a state of deep loneliness because your real self is a secret you can never share. Their belief in their cause likely helped them manage the guilt. It gave them a reason for all the deception, but it could not remove the daily grinding work of the lie itself. It was a life of quiet, unending performance. Every day was an act, and they could never, ever let the mask slip. Eventually, the walls began to crumble. One by one, the secrets started to come out. It began with small suspicions, small clues that could no longer be ignored. In 1951, after being warned that they were about to be caught, Burgess and McLean suddenly fled the country. They disappeared behind the Iron Curtain, confirming the establishment's worst fears. The shock was immense. For years, their friends and colleagues had defended them, explaining away their strange behavior. Now, the terrible truth was undeniable. The search immediately focused on who had warned them. Suspicion fell on Kim Philby. But again, he was protected by his charm, his connections, and the simple fact that so many powerful people just could not believe he was a traitor. He survived for another 12 years inside the system, until he too finally fled to Moscow. The damage they caused was huge. They passed thousands of secret documents to the Soviets. Their betrayals led to the deaths of many agents working for the West. But the story is about more than just lost secrets and failed operations. It is about a deeper failure. The system of British intelligence was not broken by a clever enemy from the outside, it was hollowed out from within. The real failure was a failure of psychology. The British establishment was blinded by its own culture. It trusted the wrong things. It trusted a certain accent, a certain education, a certain way of behaving. It looked for spies who fit a stereotype, mysterious foreigners, or angry workers. And it never seriously looked at the men who seemed most like themselves. They could not imagine that the enemy looked just like them. The story of the Cambridge Five is a story about spies and governments a long time ago. But it's also a story about something more personal. It's about how the human mind works. It shows how easily we trust what seems familiar, and how quickly we can look away from a truth that feels too uncomfortable to accept. It makes you wonder, what uncomfortable truths might we be looking away from right now?